Thousands of years before the modern world existed, the land of India was filled with mighty rivers, dense forests, wandering tribes, and mysterious cities built from baked bricks. The people living there did not know they were creating one of the oldest civilizations in human history. Along the banks of the Indus River, great cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro rose from the earth. Wide streets crossed through organized neighborhoods, drains carried away dirty water, and merchants traded goods with distant lands. The people lived in carefully planned homes and worshipped gods historians still struggle to understand today. Their symbols remained hidden in silence, undeciphered for thousands of years. For centuries, the civilization flourished. Farmers harvested crops, craftsmen created beautiful jewelry, and traders traveled across deserts and seas. But nature can destroy even the strongest kingdoms. Rivers changed their paths, floods struck the cities, and the civilization slowly began to disappear. One by one, the great cities were abandoned, swallowed by dust and time. After the fall of the ancient cities, new tribes entered northern India around 1500 BC. These were the Aryans, horse-riding warriors who brought with them a new language called Sanskrit and ancient religious traditions that would later shape Hindu culture. They sang sacred hymns known as the Vedas around great fire rituals, believing their gods controlled storms, war, and destiny itself. Villages slowly turned into kingdoms. Kings fought each other for land and power, while priests gained influence over society. People were divided into classes, creating a system that would deeply affect Indian society for centuries. Warriors became rulers, priests became spiritual leaders, traders handled wealth, and laborers worked beneath them all. As generations passed, stories of heroes and gods spread across the land. Great poets recited tales of honor, betrayal, love, and war beside royal courts and village fires. One story told of the terrible battle between the Pandavas and Kauravas in the Mahabharata, where brothers destroyed each other in a war for a throne. Another told of Prince Rama's journey to rescue his wife Sita from the demon king Ravana in the Ramayana. These stories became part of the soul of India itself. But while kings fought for power, many people began questioning the meaning of life and suffering. In the forests and mountains, wise men searched for truth through meditation and sacrifice. Among them was a prince named Siddhartha Gautama. Born into luxury, Siddhartha had everything a man could desire, yet he was haunted by sickness, old age, and death. One night he abandoned his palace and family, wandering across India in search of enlightenment. After years of struggle, he sat beneath a tree and meditated until he finally understood what he believed was the path to freedom from suffering. He became known as Gautama Buddha. His teachings spread rapidly. He rejected violence, greed, and rigid social divisions. Thousands followed him, and Buddhism slowly expanded beyond India into much of Asia. Around the same time, another spiritual teacher named Mahavira preached a path of extreme nonviolence and self-control. His followers formed the religion of Jainism, believing every living creature possessed a soul worthy of protection. While religion spread across the land, powerful kingdoms continued rising and falling. Among them, one kingdom began growing stronger than all others, Magadha. Its rulers built armies, conquered rivals, and expanded their influence across northern India. Then, from the distant west, a storm arrived. In 326 BCE, Alexander the Great marched into northwestern India after conquering much of the known world. His soldiers crossed dangerous mountains and rivers, facing fierce resistance from Indian warriors. One of the greatest battles was fought against King Porus, who charged into battle atop enormous war elephants. Although Alexander won the battle, his exhausted army feared marching deeper into India. Tired, wounded, and longing for home, the soldiers refused to continue. Alexander was forced to turn back, ending his dream of conquering all of India. Yet his invasion changed history forever. Greek influence entered India through art, trade, and politics. New ideas spread across the region, connecting east and west like never before. Soon after Alexander left, a young man named Chandragupta Maurya began gathering power. Guided by his brilliant advisor Chanakya, he overthrew rulers and united large parts of India under one empire. the Mauryan Empire was born, becoming the first great empire of ancient India. And from this empire would rise one of the most powerful and unforgettable rulers in history, Emperor Ashoka, the king who would conquer through both war and peace. Chandragupta Maurya had transformed the scattered kingdoms of India into a mighty empire, but maintaining such power was never easy. Across the vast land, governors collected taxes, soldiers guarded borders, and spies secretly watched both enemies and citizens. Guided by his ruthless advisor Chanakya, Chandragupta ruled with discipline and fear, creating one of the strongest empires the subcontinent had ever seen. The Mauryan capital at Pataliputra became a center of wealth and political power. Massive wooden palaces stood beside crowded markets filled with merchants from Persia, Central Asia, and distant lands beyond the seas. Elephants marched through the streets while royal messengers carried orders across thousands of miles. After years of rule, Chandragupta shocked many by abandoning his throne. According to tradition, he became a follower of Jainism and left royal life behind in search of spiritual peace. His son Bindusara inherited the empire and continued expanding its territory, but it was Bindusara's son who would become legendary. That prince was Ashoka. Before becoming emperor, Ashoka was known as a fierce and ambitious warrior. Stories described him as intelligent but ruthless, willing to crush rivals to gain power. When his father died, a brutal struggle for succession began inside the royal family. Brothers fought brothers, blood was spilled inside palace walls, and Ashoka emerged victorious. Once crowned emperor, Ashoka expanded the Mauryan Empire even further. Kingdoms surrendered before his armies, and his power stretched across most of the Indian subcontinent. But one land still resisted him, Kalinga. The kingdom of Kalinga stood proudly on the eastern coast and refused to bow before the Mauryan Empire. Furious, Ashoka launched a massive invasion. The war that followed became one of the darkest moments in ancient Indian history. Thousands of soldiers stormed the battlefield while elephants crushed enemy lines beneath their feet. Swords clashed, arrows filled the sky, and rivers reportedly turned red with blood. Villages burned as families fled in terror. By the end of the war, more than 100,000 people were believed to have died, while countless others were wounded or taken prisoner. When the battle ended, Ashoka walked across the ruined land of Kalinga. Everywhere he looked, he saw corpses, grieving mothers, orphaned children, and shattered cities. Victory suddenly felt meaningless. Something inside him broke. The emperor who once believed power came through conquest became haunted by guilt and sorrow. Instead of celebrating, Ashoka began questioning violence itself. He turned away from war and embraced the teachings of Gautama Buddha. Ashoka converted to Buddhism and changed the direction of his empire forever. He ordered the carving of laws and moral teachings onto giant stone pillars across India. These edicts spoke of compassion, religious tolerance, justice, and nonviolence. Ashoka encouraged kindness toward humans and animals alike. Hospitals were built, roads improved, trees planted, and wells dug for travelers. Instead of sending armies to foreign lands, Ashoka sent Buddhist missionaries across Asia. His messengers traveled to Sri Lanka, Central Asia, and beyond, spreading Buddhism far outside India. Over time, Buddhism grew into one of the world's major religions. Under Ashoka, the Mauryan Empire reached its golden age. Yet even the greatest empires cannot escape time. After Ashoka's death, weak rulers struggled to control the vast empire. Governors rebelled, enemies attacked borders, and the Mauryan Empire slowly collapsed. By 185 BCE, the once mighty dynasty had fallen apart. India entered a new age of smaller kingdoms, invasions, and cultural change. From the northwest came foreign powers, Greeks, Scythians, and Kushans, who entered India and mixed their traditions with local cultures. Trade routes flourished, connecting India to Rome, China, and Persia. Indian spices, silk, gemstones, and ideas traveled across continents. During this period, art and learning blossomed. Buddhist monasteries became centers of education, while sculptors created magnificent statues influenced by both Indian and Greek styles. One of the greatest rulers of this era was Kanishk of the Kushan Empire, who strongly supported Buddhism and expanded trade across Asia. But centuries later, another powerful empire would rise in northern India, an empire many historians would call the Golden Age of ancient India, the Gupta Empire. Under Gupta rule, science, mathematics, literature, and art reached extraordinary heights. Scholars studied astronomy, doctors performed advanced surgeries, and mathematicians developed ideas that would later change the world forever. Among these ideas was one simple symbol that revolutionized mathematics: zero. As the Mauryan Empire faded into history, the land of India once again fractured into many kingdoms. Warriors battled for territory, traders crossed dangerous roads carrying silk and spices, and foreign invaders entered through the northwestern mountains. Yet out of this chaos, a new empire slowly began to rise, one that would create a golden age remembered for brilliance, science, and culture. Around 320 CE, a ruler named Chandragupta I founded the Gupta Empire in northern India. Unlike the Mauryans, the Guptas relied not only on military power, but also on alliances and diplomacy. Their kingdom expanded steadily, growing richer and stronger with every generation. Then came Samudragupta. He was not only a conqueror, but also a poet and musician. Historians often compare him to Alexander because of his military victories across India. His armies marched across forests, rivers, and deserts, defeating rival kings and forcing many kingdoms to accept Gupta authority. But unlike many conquerors, Samudragupta often allowed defeated rulers to keep their thrones if they remained loyal. This strategy strengthened the empire without constant rebellion. Under Gupta rule, India entered an age of prosperity. Trade flourished across land and sea. Merchants sold Indian cotton, spices, ivory, and precious gems to distant civilizations. Cities became crowded centers of learning and wealth. Temples rose into the sky, while scholars gathered in great universities. One of the greatest achievements of the Gupta age came in mathematics and science. Indian mathematicians developed the decimal system and advanced the use of zero, an idea that would later transform global mathematics forever. 000. Without zero, modern science, computers, banking, and engineering would not exist as we know them today. A brilliant mathematician named Aryabhata studied astronomy and mathematics with extraordinary accuracy. He argued that the Earth rotated on its axis, a revolutionary idea for that era. He also calculated astronomical movements with remarkable precision. Indian doctors also made incredible advances. Surgeons performed operations using sophisticated tools, while medical texts described treatments, medicines, and surgical techniques far ahead of many other civilizations. Meanwhile, literature and art flourished. The poet Kalidasa wrote beautiful dramas and poems that became masterpieces of classical Sanskrit literature. Hindu temples were decorated with carvings of gods, dancers, warriors, and mythical creatures. Religion also evolved during this time. Hinduism grew stronger and absorbed many traditions from different regions. Worship of gods such as Vishnu, Shiva, and Durga spread widely across India. Buddhism and Jainism still survived, but Hindu culture became increasingly dominant. For many people, the Gupta period felt like an age of peace and greatness. But golden ages rarely last forever. From Central Asia came a terrifying threat, the Huns. These fierce invaders swept into northern India during the 5th century. They destroyed cities, weakened trade, and shattered Gupta power. The empire slowly collapsed under invasion, internal conflict, and economic decline. As central authority disappeared, India once again divided into regional kingdoms. Powerful rulers emerged in different parts of the subcontinent, each fighting for dominance. In the south, great dynasties such as the Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas ruled wealthy kingdoms, connected to overseas trade. Tamil merchants sailed across the Indian Ocean, trading with Arabia, Southeast Asia, and China. Massive temples were built with towering gateways and detailed stone sculptures that amazed travelers from around the world. Among the southern kingdoms, the Chola Empire became especially powerful. Their navy dominated sea routes, and their armies launched expeditions far beyond India's shores. Kings built magnificent temples, like the Brihadiswara Temple, symbols of both devotion and royal power. While southern India prospered, northern India faced waves of invasions and political instability. Kingdoms rose and fell rapidly. Rajput warriors became famous for courage and fierce resistance against enemies. Castles and forts appeared across deserts and hills as rulers prepared for endless conflict. Then, from the northwest, a new force entered India. This force carried not only swords but also a new religion, Islam. Arab traders had peacefully reached India long before, especially along the western coast, where trade created cultural connections between Muslims and Indians. But later, Turkish and Afghan invaders arrived through violent military campaigns. One of the most feared among them was Mahmud of Ghazni. During the 11th century, he launched repeated raids into India, attacking wealthy cities and temples. His invasions spread fear across northern kingdoms and exposed their political weakness. Soon after, another conqueror named Muhammad Ghori defeated major Rajput rulers and laid the foundation for Muslim rule in northern India. The age of ancient India was ending. A new chapter was beginning. The age of the Delhi Sultanate, where sultans, warriors, and empires would reshape India forever. The old kingdoms of India were divided, weakened by endless wars and rivalries. Rajput kings fought bravely, but they stood alone against a new wave of invaders arriving from Central Asia. These invaders came with fast cavalry, iron discipline, and a burning ambition to rule northern India. In 1192, a decisive battle changed Indian history forever. Muhammad Ghori defeated the powerful Rajput ruler Prithviraj Chauhan at the Second Battle of Tarain. After the victory, northern India slowly fell under Muslim control. Though Ghori eventually returned to Afghanistan, his generals remained behind and established a new ruling power in India, the Delhi Sultanate. Delhi became the center of this growing empire. Massive forts, mosques, palaces, and markets transformed the city into one of the richest capitals in Asia. Persian culture mixed with Indian traditions, creating new forms of language, architecture, music, and food. The early sultans ruled with military strength. Rebellions were crushed brutally, and rival kingdoms were constantly attacked. Yet despite violence, trade and urban life expanded rapidly. Merchants traveled through crowded bazaars selling silk, horses, spices, weapons, and jewels. One remarkable ruler during this era was Razia Sultan, one of the few female Muslim rulers in medieval history. Intelligent and courageous, she tried to rule independently in a world dominated by powerful nobles and warlords. But many refused to accept a woman on the throne, and her reign ended in betrayal and conflict. As centuries passed, different dynasties controlled the Delhi Sultanate. Some rulers focused on culture and administration, while others became feared for cruelty and ambition. Then came Alauddin Khalji. He was one of the most powerful and ruthless sultans of medieval India. Determined to strengthen his empire, he expanded deep into southern India and crushed rebellions with terrifying force. To maintain control, he created strict economic reforms and used spies to monitor nobles and officials. But the greatest danger arrived not from India itself. It came from the Mongols. The Mongol Empire, created by Genghis Khan, had already destroyed kingdoms across Asia. Their armies were feared throughout the world for their speed and brutality. Several times, Mongol forces attacked India's borders, but the Delhi Sultanate managed to resist them, preventing a disaster that could have completely changed Indian history. Despite military success, the Sultanate remained unstable. Assassinations, palace conspiracies, and civil wars weakened the rulers. Different dynasties rose and fell quickly, while regional kingdoms constantly challenged Delhi's authority. In the south, powerful Hindu kingdoms still resisted northern domination. Among them, the Vijayanagara Empire became one of the strongest states in Indian history. Its capital city was filled with massive temples, markets, and wealth so great that foreign travelers described it as one of the grandest cities in the world. For nearly 3 centuries, Vijayanagara stood as a major power in southern India, defending Hindu traditions while engaging in trade with Persia, Arabia, and Europe. Meanwhile, new cultural changes were spreading across India. The interaction between Muslims and Hindus created entirely new traditions. Persian and local languages mixed together, eventually contributing to the development of Urdu. Sufi saints traveled across villages preaching peace, spirituality, and devotion, attracting followers from many backgrounds. At the same time, the Bhakti movement spread among Hindus, emphasizing personal devotion to God rather than rigid rituals or caste divisions. Poets and saints sang songs of love, unity, and spirituality that touched ordinary people across the subcontinent. But even as culture flourished, the Delhi Sultanate was growing weaker. Internal corruption, rebellions, and economic troubles damaged the empire. Then, in 1398, a terrifying conqueror invaded India, Timur. Known in the West as Tamerlane, Timur attacked Delhi with devastating violence. His armies massacred thousands, looted wealth, and left the city in ruins. The Delhi Sultanate survived, but it never fully recovered from the destruction. As the old empire weakened, smaller kingdoms fought for control. Northern India once again entered chaos. Then, in the early 16th century, another invader marched into India from Central Asia. Unlike previous conquerors, this man carried a new and deadly weapon that would transform warfare forever: gunpowder cannons. His name was Babur, and with him began one of the greatest empires in Indian history, the Mughal Empire. In 1526, the fate of India changed once again when a warrior from Central Asia marched toward Delhi with a small but highly disciplined army. His name was Babur, a descendant of both Timur and Genghis Khan. Unlike many rulers before him, Babur understood the terrifying power of gunpowder weapons. At the First Battle of Panipat, Babur faced the massive army of Sultan Ibrahim Lodi. The Sultan had war elephants and far more soldiers, but Babur had cannons. As the battle began, thunderous explosions shook the battlefield. Smoke filled the air while cannon fire terrified elephants and shattered enemy lines. Ibrahim Lodi's army collapsed, and Babur captured Delhi. The Mughal Empire was born. Babur ruled only for a few years, but he laid the foundation for an empire that would dominate India for centuries. After his death, his son Humayun inherited the throne, but enemies quickly challenged him. Humayun lost much of the empire and was forced into exile, wandering through Persia while struggling to survive. Years later, with Persian support, he returned and regained Delhi. But shortly after reclaiming power, Humayun died in an accident after falling from a staircase. His young son Akbar became emperor at just 13 years old. At first, many believed the empire would collapse under a child ruler, but Akbar proved them wrong. Over time, he became one of the greatest rulers in Indian history. Akbar was not only a conqueror, but also a skilled administrator and visionary leader. He expanded the Mughal Empire across much of northern and central India through both military strength and political alliances. Instead of ruling only through fear, he tried to unite different communities under one empire. He married Rajput princesses, gave important positions to Hindu nobles, and reduced religious discrimination. Akbar invited scholars from different religions, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, and Jains, to debate philosophy and faith in his court. For a moment, India experienced unusual religious tolerance under Mughal rule. Akbar also transformed administration. Taxes were reorganized, provinces were managed more efficiently, and trade increased across the empire. Roads connected cities, while markets overflowed with silk, spices, jewelry, and luxury goods. The Mughal court became a symbol of wealth and magnificence. After Akbar came Jahangir, known for his love of art and beauty. During his reign, Mughal painting reached extraordinary heights. Foreign travelers described the empire as unimaginably rich. Then came Shah Jahan. Under Shah Jahan, Mughal architecture reached its peak. Palaces, forts, mosques, and gardens were built across India, displaying incredible beauty and craftsmanship. But one event would immortalize Shah Jahan forever. His beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal, died while giving birth to their child. Heartbroken, the emperor ordered the construction of a magnificent tomb in her memory. The result became one of the most famous buildings in the world, Taj Mahal. Made from shining white marble and decorated with precious stones and intricate carvings, the Taj Mahal became a symbol of love, grief, and Mughal greatness. Yet behind the beauty of the empire, darkness was growing. After Shah Jahan fell ill, his sons began a brutal war for the throne. Brother fought brother in a bloody struggle for power. Eventually, Aurangzeb emerged victorious after imprisoning his own father inside Agra fort. Aurangzeb was a powerful military ruler, but unlike Akbar, he followed a stricter religious policy. He expanded the empire to its largest size through endless warfare, but constant battles drained resources and increased rebellion across India. Many groups resisted Mughal rule, including the Marathas in western India and the Sikhs in the north. The empire became overstretched, struggling to control its vast territories. After Aurangzeb's death in 1707, the Mughal Empire slowly began to collapse. Weak emperors sat on the throne while governors and regional rulers gained independence. Corruption spread, armies weakened, and the once mighty empire fractured into competing states. Then foreign powers saw an opportunity. European traders had already arrived in India by sea. The Portuguese came first, followed by the Dutch, French, and British. At first, they only wanted trade, spices, textiles, tea, and wealth. But among them, one company would slowly become more powerful than kings themselves. The British East India Company. Using trade, diplomacy, and war, the company expanded its influence across India. Indian rulers fought each other while the British gained control piece by piece. Soon, merchants would become rulers, and India would enter one of the darkest chapters in its history, British colonial rule. By the early 18th century, the Mughal Empire was collapsing. Across India, governors declared independence, kingdoms fought for survival, and ordinary people suffered under endless wars. In this chaos, foreign trading companies quietly expanded their power. Among them, the most dangerous was the British East India Company. At first, the company appeared harmless. British merchants arrived on ships carrying cloth, silver, and goods for trade. They built trading posts in cities like Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. Indian rulers allowed them to operate because they seemed like ordinary businessmen. But the company had its own private army. As Indian kingdoms fought one another, the British used diplomacy, bribery, and military force to gain influence. They supported one ruler against another, made secret agreements, and slowly captured territory piece by piece. The turning point came in 1757 at the Battle of Plassey. There, Robert Clive and the East India Company defeated the Nawab of Bengal through betrayal and manipulation. After the victory, the company gained control over Bengal, one of the richest regions in India. Suddenly, traders had become rulers. The British drained enormous wealth from India. Taxes increased, local industries weakened, and resources flowed toward Britain. Indian farmers were forced to grow cash crops instead of food, causing terrible famines in some regions. Yet while wealth left India, British power kept growing. Over time, the East India Company defeated powerful Indian states, including the Marathas, Mysore, and the Sikhs. Brave leaders resisted fiercely. One of the most famous was Tipu Sultan of Mysore, who fought several wars against the British and used advanced rockets in battle. But eventually, he was defeated and killed in 1799. By the 19th century, most of India was under British control. British officials introduced railways, telegraphs, and modern administration, but these developments mainly served colonial interests. Railways helped move troops and goods quickly across the country, while Indian resources continued enriching Britain. Many Indians grew angry at British rule. Cultural interference, racial discrimination, and economic exploitation created deep resentment. Then came the spark that ignited rebellion. In 1857, Indian soldiers serving in the British Army, called sepoys, revolted after rumors spread that rifle cartridges were greased with cow and pig fat, offending both Hindu and Muslim religious beliefs. But the anger went far beyond cartridges. Years of humiliation and oppression exploded into violence. Soldiers rebelled in Meerut and marched toward Delhi, where they declared the aging Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar as their symbolic leader. The revolt spread rapidly across northern India. Cities burned, British officers were killed, and brutal fighting erupted everywhere. Rulers, peasants, soldiers, and civilians joined the uprising against colonial rule. The British responded with extreme violence. Entire villages were destroyed. Suspected rebels were executed, and thousands died in the fighting. After months of war, the rebellion was crushed. The revolt of 1857 failed, but it changed India forever. The British government dissolved the East India Company and took direct control of India under the British Crown. Queen Victoria became Empress of India, beginning the period known as the British Raj. For decades, Britain ruled India with both power and fear. But something new was awakening among Indians. Nationalism. Educated Indians began demanding rights, equality, and self-rule. In 1885, political leaders formed the Indian National Congress, hoping to peacefully push for reforms. At first, many leaders believed cooperation with Britain could improve India's future. But over time, frustration grew stronger. Then, in the early 20th century, one man emerged who would transform the independence movement completely. A thin lawyer wearing simple clothes. A man who challenged an empire without guns. His name was Mahatma Gandhi. Using nonviolence, protests, and civil disobedience, Gandhi inspired millions of Indians to stand against British rule. He led boycotts, marches, and campaigns that shook the foundations of the empire. At the same time, other leaders also rose to prominence. Jawaharlal Nehru, Subhas Chandra Bose, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Each had different visions for the future of the subcontinent. As World War II weakened Britain, pressure for independence became unstoppable. Massive protests erupted, prisons filled with activists, and tensions between Hindus and Muslims increased dangerously. The British finally decided to leave India. But freedom would come at a terrible cost. The land would be divided, and millions of people would soon face one of the largest and bloodiest migrations in human history.
Enjoyed the video? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing stories and videos every day. Your support keeps the channel alive and motivates us to create even better content.